Sloppy Spoilers with your host, DT2. What's up, y'all? DG2 Comic Chat here for another episode of Sloppy Spoilers. Tonight, we're going to be reviewing Shogun Episode 3, which I have subtitled At Last Some Action. And I'm really glad to see some of the stuff that's going on. But, you know, of course, my most hated trope is also going to happen. So we'll talk about that. I mean, I knew it. Even for tonight, I saw it coming. I was like, I knew this was going to happen. So I'll tell you what I'm talking about in a minute. Let me bring my co-host on. Welcome to David, Nemesis Howard.
What's going on, everybody? Yeah. Once again, I enjoyed this episode. I think it was successful. They're changing some stuff with the book. They're adding some stuff, but I think they're doing it the right way. But I'm really looking forward to talking to it. I'm still enjoying it, and I'm curious to see what the trope is because you always pick up on that stuff. So I really want to hear what you found out.
Welcome to Steve, Shane Wings Celeste.
Well, yeah, I think I'm pretty much with you guys on this. This is a pretty solid episode. The action picks up, which helps. It has a little bit of that book pacing, and this whole series really does, to its benefit and detraction in some ways. But in this case, you know, everything picks up, things start happening. You know, it's really fun to see some of these moments. You actually get to see, you know, Blackthorn doing stuff that's useful instead of like sitting around being a prisoner for most of the episode. You know, a lot of good things coming together here.
Welcome to Jeff, Mr. Happy. Brazil.
Yeah, I got to agree with Steve on that. It's nice to see Blackthorn finally being a proactive character instead of a reactive character and actually seeing him start to earn some respect from the people around him. And, of course, we get to see what a badass our Shogun is yet again. The guy is the master planner.
Yes. So, I got to have RBF, though, Jeff? I'm just asking a question. Okay, anyway, so in terms of what was going on tonight, as usual, I'm going to make an analogy that's way far away from what we're talking about, but it feels right to me. And that is that Toranaga is who I wish Loki was. This is who I thought Loki started out to be when we first meet him. But Toranaga actually not only accomplishes his plans and not there's, you know, real danger and real stakes, but he's actually several moves ahead, at least most of the time, of his opponents. And he uses all kinds of things. He uses baits and switch. He uses camouflage. He uses mistaken identity. He uses double agents. So I'm really impressed with how I see him moving across the chessboard in terms of what's coming. What I'm not impressed with is my most hated trope, which I knew it is. I knew this before tonight. I knew it was coming. And my most hated trope is, of course, Miracles falling in love with Blackthorn. Can't stand it. Knew it was coming. I was like, yeah, okay, before this is all over, they're going to hook up. Haven't read the book, didn't see the other thing, but I'm like, yeah, before this is all over, them two. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. Literally out of all the men in all the cities that she know, then she going to fall in love with him.
No lies detected. So, yeah.
So I'm like, get out of my face with that. Knew it was going to happen. I mean, I knew it as soon as they told Blackthorn she's going to be a translator. I was like, I know where this is going. So, but anyway, whatever. You know, trope's going to trope. Folks going to folks. So in terms of how everything unfolded tonight, it was fun to see, but I'm finally glad we got to see some sword fighting like I wanted to see it. And the stakes keep getting, how can I say this? It's like a slow burn. It's like, you know, if you're turning things up slowly, like you're trying to cook something and you increase it by 1 degree. And so it keeps going that way, but you can feel the tension bubbling. And what really amazes me is how there's the duality of how we're supposed to be about honor. And tonight, the big Hullabaloo was about protocol, all this different kind of stuff, and everybody's lying, and everybody's backbiting, and everybody's fighting for their own little corner of the world because they want the world to look like the way they think it should look. That still amazes me. But anyway, so let me hear you guys' first impressions of the episode. Start with Bracy.
Yeah, as I said online in our own little private Twitter thing, like this is Shogun's continuing to succeed where Rings of Power and Wheel of Time failed on Amazon. You know, all three of these shows are lavish, have high production values, but Shogun is delivering in terms of story, acting, and character. And I'm so invested in this. Like, even though this is decades and decades removed from the original show I watched with Richard Chamberlain or the books itself, it's still an exciting, viable, and fresh experience for me. And so I'm just really getting into it. I'm enjoying seeing Blackthorn finally not being such a hard-headed asshole all the time, but actually becoming useful to the point where people are starting to respect him a little bit more than just his pilot skills. I was like, okay, this guy is useful in more than one situation. Maybe he's not just a brash, uncouth barbarian all the time. Because it's funny because the whites and the Asians both clearly think that this guy is nothing but like kind of a loudmouth, odious kind of braggart. But he's finding his place. He's earning his way and starting to pick up on the society a bit, which again is good to see as his character becomes more refined in the series. And I like seeing how he's responding to a situation and how those around him are responding to him.
Well, I'm glad you like him because I still can't stand him. I kept wishing somebody.
I didn't say I like him.
Oh, okay.
I said he's earning his spot.
Oh,
and that's
okay.
the nice thing about a character. You want to see a character earn their spot. He's still not the most interesting character in the movie or in the series. That's still Toranaga by far, him and Mariko.
Well, I keep hoping we're going to have a scene where somebody just, does a Highlander and separates his head from his neck. I'm like, bye-bye now. Okay, Nims, give me your first impressions of this episode.
I continue to like the tone that this series is taking and the setting that they're giving us. The main complaint I would have with the original miniseries was it was just too clean. It was too soundstage. This one, when you look at the interior of the Japanese and their clothes and everything is meticulous, and then you go inside the Spanish ship and it's dark and it's gritty and the people are a little bit dirty, and they even present the Jesuits and the Portuguese and the Spanish, and they feel much more believable. And that captain of the black ship, you come right off as an a-hole right from the very beginning. You just don't like that guy. And they even gave us some seediness to the captain or the leader of the Jesuit sect. So Alvito's superior and the Jesuits. So, I mean, I really like the way that they're doing that, but this goes across everything. And the other thing I will say is that I really still like the writing on this show. I think that they're doing a good job taking stuff out and putting stuff in. And the number one thing to put in this one was the scene where you get to see the Christian daimyo doing the attack on the little caravan there, going after the pilot. And then when they realize that Toranaga's there, I mean, then it's a whole shit show, and that's not in the book or the first miniseries at all. But I think it's a good scene because it lets us know that, oh shit, they effed up, so it's cool. I really like what they're doing. So I think the writing is a big star of this show as well, but the setting and everything is fantastic. So
cool. Steve, first impressions.
Yeah, I think I would agree with all that. The one thing I would add is that it's actually showing that Blackthorn is getting a bit more clever, and he's actually like taking notes of things that is going on, and he's turning into his advantage. Like the entire scene where they're trying to distract away from the fact that Toranaga is hiding in the caravan cart with where the women are supposed to be, and Blackthorn's solution for dealing with this guy getting too close is, I'm going to be every bit the annoying barbarian he thinks I am, as a distraction. He's fast talking his way out of this and saying, "Oh yes, how dare you insult the purity of my women because I come from another country and you don't know anything about me." And then just trash talking like the guy and saying, "Your hair looks like the tail of a pony." All that kind of stuff. And he's just over the top. And he's doing it strategically because if he is the target of attention, nobody is looking inside the cart. And I'm like, that's clever. That's very, very clever. Make it, totally use that. And it works. And on top of that, you also get some really nice stuff with him, just trash talking the guy on the captain of the black ship, while they're doing their little race. And I'm just like, yeah, they're just messing with each other. And yet you can kind of tell there's an interesting relationship between those two. They hate each other, but they're these respected rivals in a way too. And I kind of liked seeing that. So it was nice to see Blackthorn be more involved. At the same time, there's no question that the real star of the show is Toranaga. There's no question. I mean, that guy is the magnificent bastard. He's the total chess master playing everybody. And you just want to see, how he's going to get out of this because he's planned this like to the nth degree, and you want to see exactly how he does that. How does he get out of the situation? And it is very, very, very well done, the way that they play it out. And he's taking risks. There's no guaranteed success for him. He is doing something very risky that could get everybody killed if they fail. But the people like Toranaga, who are classic magnificent bastards, are willing to calculate those risks, and they make them pay off by making a clutch play in the moment. And he does that here as well. So yeah, he keeps earning my respect throughout this show. It's just really, really fun to see all this.
I have a quick question for all of you that haven't read the book. In the book, Rodriguez, when they first meet in Ajuro, I don't know how to say that name of that town, but when they come in the galley, he teaches Blackthorn that the best way for a barbarian to act around non-nobles, not daimios, is to yell and act like you have authority and then hope for the best. And you can end up with your head, but if the Japanese don't know what to do, they'll pause. And so that's why Blackthorn acts that way in that moment, but they don't.
It works. It works.
But does that change your impression of that scene, knowing that was in the book? So
no, I can't figure out how he doesn't have a samurai sword between his rib cage already. I don't want. Why are you still alive? You should be kibbles and bits. That's my reaction.
For me, the scene still works because he knows he is the quote unquote guest of Toranaga. So he's determined that he has this level of protection. It's not 100%, but I also like the fact that for a change, he's not just yelling without a purpose all the time. That he's actually remaining quiet and paying attention. Like, he noticed the switch between the occupants of the Palanquin. So it shows that he's really coming around to a situation and trying to figure out the best way to survive all this.
Yeah. Well, here's the other thing. It's that, there's a risk and he's playing with the risk. But here's the thing. If they catch Toranaga, all of them die. Yeah. If he takes a risk and gets caught, it might just be him. Because he's the barbarian, nobody's going to miss him. So, either way, he's kind of in the hot seat. So, why not take the risk?
Well, again, that's what makes Toranaga so fascinating. But he's playing with everybody's lives. I mean, he's really, betting the farm and hoping that his plans work out the way he thinks they will or he thinks they should. But there's still going to be sacrifice along the way. And we see that tonight. And it's like everybody's kind of prepared to accept that.
I mean, that's the thing that joins Toranaga with Blackthorn. Both of them really have nothing to lose. So they've kind of got to go all out.
It's audacity in the face of danger. And that's really what a lot of it is. And I think that's what Toranaga respects about Blackthorn. He is extremely audacious at just the right moments, and it pays off for him.
So what I have to say next is another character that I've really come to love, and you have to love her just because of her name, is Toranaga's wife, Lady Kira no Kata. Love her, man. She's always cracking wise. She's always saying, "Oh, I'm an old woman, blah, 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 blah." But inside that snark is always some type of jab, some type of dig, some type of, you don't know me, you don't know my life, you don't know me like that. And that cracks me up every time she talks, because everybody's got an auntie just like that, like her. And
she also plays on the private voice of women of that time. Like, you know, you can't get away with certain things, but, you know, you kind of have that. So you kind of couch it with, I'm a simple woman, but at the same time, I can kick all of your asses because I'm the queen. You know, there's a bit of that with her. What's
amazing is you caught on to a little bit of what's in the book. And one of the reasons I love that character is that she's Toranaga's oldest wife. I think it's not his first wife, but his oldest wife that's surviving. And she's the one that runs his household and the one he trusts. And he says as much. He's like, I go for sex or physical pleasure to my consorts or my other wives, but the one that I trust with counsel and stuff is her. And they're always joking. And he's always smacking her on the butt in the book and stuff like that. So,
he likes her big rump, apparently.
Yes. So,
and he cannot lie.
So he does the Eddie Murphy thing. No, I have sex with them, but I made love to you. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So just love her. Just love her snark. Just love her multi-layered way of communication. Love how she's clearly over it all. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. She's over it. I love characters like that.
But you can see that she's equal to the task as well, especially like when she is revealed in the Palanquin. Like she and Toranaga make a powerful pair because she knows the deal and she knows how to handle a situation.
And as far as we know, she's the only one that was in on it. So you know, which says something, because here's this man who's a 5D chess player, and yet there was one person he let in on his plan and trusted enough, you know, because she could have, if she said anything to anybody, he's a dead man.
So let me tell you what I thought was going to happen. Let me say what I thought happened. I had to blink a few times. I'm like, oh, okay. What I thought, okay, the girl that's pregnant, that's in her last couple weeks, is she an ally or an enemy?
She's an ally. That's one of his other wives. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Because what I thought happened was that Lady Kira no Kata poisoned her and poisoned the baby. That's why she had to attack, because she touched her. And when she touched her, I was like, oh, Lord, did she poison that child? And then she's over there throwing up, and I'm in my last weeks of her. I'm like, did she kill the baby? I was like, please don't tell me she killed the baby.
No, she was a distraction.
Yeah, she was putting on an act and doing the, you know, fall, and everybody is concerned about a pregnant woman. So,
DT's worried.
They're trying to draw attention away from the cart.
DT's already had enough baby killing episode 1.
They did the Jane thing of what we need here is a diversion. Okay, so that's cool. She's a living diversion. All right, I'll give him that one. Okay, so and also the other obvious big change or sacrifice or implied sacrifice is Lady Miracle's husband, Buntaro, and he's kind of like a jerk from the beginning. So as he's, you know, responding in his jerky way, I'm like, you about to die, son. You might as well put a big neon sign on your forehead. But is he actually dead? So what I liked about, well, let's take it in order. I liked about cutting through the forest thing and the ambush coming up, because even there, Toranaga was doing some sleight of hand and confusing his enemies as they saw it. Because I'm saying to myself, if you're surrounded by archers and they got flaming arrows, if you don't have armor that can block that, what is your way out? What is your escape? How do you get out of that? And so he did a little confusion, little curly shuffle, and they were like, what's he doing? I thought it was great, because I was like, if I didn't know you had main character powers, there's actually no way out of this if you're surrounded. If you're surrounded, they've got the high ground, they've got more archers than you, and they got flaming arrows. How? But I saw that unfold. Like I said, this is kind of who I wish Loki was, so I like that. And then we have Buntaro, you know, basically saying goodbye to everybody without saying a word, and I like that. And I like how when they communicate with their bows, what they're saying has everything to do with their posture and their intensity. And so it's really awesome to me the way you can communicate all of that with just the look and the way you bow, but no words. So as Buntaro is basically saying goodbye to his wife, she catches her breath. She's like, oh no, does this mean what I think it means? Even though there doesn't seem like there's any love lost between them. And Toranaga is like, thank you for this, do what you must, all that kind of stuff in his bow. And Richard's got that look on his face like, well, if you got to go, this is an honorable death. And so it's, 1 against 1,000, or at least 1 against, several hundred. But I was like, they're really going to take him out? I don't know. So he's fighting, and he's fighting valiantly, and he's fighting with like no chance of survival, just in terms of the sheer numbers or whatever. And I really like that. But to me, it was the yet another moment where the loyalty to Toranaga and the risk level of his plan, and the fact that everybody's trying to keep Blackthorn, Toranaga, and Lady Mariko safe. So they're solidified in my mind as like the main trio at this point. And I'm like, so the only thing I'm saying as a watcher that doesn't have the background from the other stuff is that the payoff better be worth it, because you're going to leave a bloody trail to the end. I already see that. There's going to be nothing but a bloody trail for you to try to do what you're trying to do. And so when we get there, what I personally want to see as a watcher is that the payoff is going to be worth the people that you sacrifice like pawns or like rooks or like knights on this board on the way. So what do you guys think about that? Nims, no spoilers, but let me hear what you think about what you think about what I'm saying.
No, I mean, all of that makes a lot of sense. What you said about Buntaro and his goodbye on the pier, I absolutely agree. I mean, the guy's a jerk, but he's an honorable jerk. I mean, he's like the jerk version of an ideal samurai, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. You're right that there's no love lost between Kenya and his wife. We will see. I don't want to give any spoilers away on that, so I will wait and see what they do with that in the series. But as far as, the way Toranaga is playing and everything and the payoff, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces that are going to fall into place here as the series unfolds. I'm curious to see which ones they take, which ones they leave, because there's a lot going on, and how they bring it all together at the end. So obviously I know the story from what I have read and what I've seen before, but they're doing their own thing here. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But I agree with you. It's like, if you're going to have Toranaga have these powers, Toranaga have 5D chess, he's moving the people around the battlefield, around the chessboard, and sacrificing this piece here and that piece there, then yeah, we got to see that in the end, what he pulls off is all worth it. So I agree with you on that one.
Steve, what do you think?
Yeah, it's very similar. I'm actually reminded a little bit of Babylon 5, which I've been rewatching not too long ago. There was an episode where Bryan Cranston plays this captain on one of the Alliance ships, and he is sent on a suicide mission, and you don't know why at first. But then you find out that the reason that he sent him there is to put the shadows, the villains of the show, into a certain place where the heroes can end the war. And they do. So we see there that that sacrifice had a payoff, because it leads to a good consequence for everyone involved. The sacrifice is tragic, but it has a purpose. So we need to see that in this show. So I would agree with that. As for Buntaro, yeah, I had forgotten what a jerk he had been, because some of these characters tend to blur a little bit together. But yeah, I was thinking, yeah, this guy might be a jerk, but at the same time, he's dying in the samurai tradition. He is dying. He's putting death before dishonor. He is standing there protecting his lord, which is what you're supposed to do as a samurai. Your final, ultimate duty is to your lord, and so he's willing to put his own life for that, and he does eventually seemingly die for that. Now, I think it is a little stupid for him to leave the pier, because strategically, he was kind of in a narrow line where they actually had to come at him one by one. And so he couldn't end up getting swarmed there. But, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, he has to die for certain things to happen. He has to die for Toranaga's plan to come to fruition. He has to die for whatever happens between Blackthorn and Mariko to happen. So I kind of got that.
Yeah. If he's on the pier, though, we can't have the ambiguous death.
Yeah. I would rather have an unambiguous death, to be honest. Like, show him actually die for this.
I'm like DT. It's like, I'm not necessarily sure we've seen the last of him, because I didn't go back and rewatch the old series or reread the books. I wanted to experience this as fresh as I could.
If we didn't see it happen, then we don't know what happened.
Nobody, no death. The Marvel Comics rule.
Now, one of the things I've enjoyed most in talking to Bracy and Nims is talking to military people, because another one of my pet peeves, which I don't know if we have that in this show, which is actually quite refreshing to my brain, but one of my pet peeves, because they're all throughout The Walking Dead. I can't stand characters that don't get the situation that they're in. So maybe I can put up with one of them, maybe. But when you have like a whole town full of people, or you have a whole cadre full of people, or you have a whole army full of people and they just don't get it, then I'm like, all y'all gonna die, and all y'all gonna die hard because you don't get the situation you're in. Just since I'm talking about The Walking Dead, if you ever are in a zombie apocalypse, everybody human is your enemy, your biggest liability is children. Children scream, children holler, they give away your position. They tell your enemies where you are all the time. So you got to figure out a way to keep the kids quiet. And children don't understand the situation. So they're just going to keep tantruming until the zombies or the walkers find you. Until they smell you and find out all that blood and guts they put on you, you're alive, but your kibbles and bits now. So whenever I see characters like that in Walking Dead, I'm counting the minutes until you die, because you don't get it. So I'm having the opposite reaction with this show, and I really, really like it. I'm surprised.
Where everybody gets it.
Yeah, I'm surprised, because if you know anything about war, no matter what perspective you experience it from, you know, there's this great line in Kingdom Come where a Superman's trying to put the errant superheroes into the gulag, and somebody says, what happens if they don't cooperate? And Diana says, then it's war. And Superman says, you can't have a war without people dying. And Diana stops and gives him this look like, are you 65 years old and still that naive? Really, dog, really? And then she gives him a kiss and just walks away, like, because Diana gets it, because she was born and bred to be a warrior. Batman gets it. But Clark still has that hope that somehow we can resolve this without bloodshed. So that's what I mean when I say, when I watch this, I'm like, no, everybody in this mix understands I'm going to have to give my life for what I believe. And whatever it is I believe, and whatever side it is I'm on. And even if that doesn't mean my death, it means my servitude, because giving my life is not always death. Sometimes giving my life is giving my days, giving my energy. And it's just so refreshing to me to see everybody in the mix get it.
Now, to your point about how this was playing out with the sacrifices and how it might all end up, as somebody who's been a longtime watcher of samurai films from the 70s forward, this is playing out very much as what I would expect. I don't know who's writing the show, but this feels like they're either invested in that or they paid attention to that, because this is playing out the way you would expect it to. It is the duties, the bonds of loyalty between his lord and his retainers, and obviously you have a few who are on the shadier side because there are those who are looking out for themselves. But we see, the men in the forest like, you go on, we'll hold them here, and then I forgot his name now. Mariko's husband. He's again, thank you. He's again holding the line because that's his duty. That's what he does. That's his purpose as a samurai to his lord, his daimyo, and even the interplay you see between them. A key facet of these films, how much is conveyed without words. It's conveyed through expression. If you look at the films of Akira Kurosawa, if you look at films like Yojimbo or The Seven Samurai, how much is just there in the attitude, in the look, and of course, as you well noted, in the posture of the bow. So much is said there. And this is playing out so much like this that it gives me tremendous hope for the rest of the series.
Now, I will tell you, the writer on this, there's two writers on this series, and they're writing all the episodes I've seen so far. Rachel Kondo, who I've never seen anything, I can't find anything else she's done. But the other one is Justin Marks. And Justin Marks has been involved with some good stuff. He did the Jungle Book, which was, it was okay. he wrote Top Gun Maverick. So
I thought I knew that name.
Yeah, so
I feel like these two have really done their research, because for somebody who's been a fan of this particular type of cinema for a very long time, these folks know their shit. They're getting it right.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah, I think Kondo. I think on one of those behind the scenes thing, we've seen Kondo, and I believe she's half Japanese, so she's definitely somebody bringing in the cultural aspects.
Excellent.
I also would say one of the things they've done here that other series haven't done, like Wheel of Time, they've gone with 2 writers and they're writing the whole series instead of having different writers on each episode.
Consistency.
Like you said, Tone, but so far nobody's out of character. So far the characters are unfolding, and what we're seeing makes sense given what we know, and that's a sign of strong writing. So for everybody, all the writers watching, that's one of the things you want to have happen. You want to unfold your characters, because that makes them interesting as you learn new things about them, but you don't want them to go so far out of character until it takes your audience out of whatever scene that they're in. I was just having a conversation today, I think, on Twitter about, because basically people were saying that in Captain America Civil War, the Avengers fall apart. And I said, yeah, they do, but most of it's out of character. Because Cap just turns his back on everything he would believe in for Bucky, which is why I can't stand it. And everybody, and War Machine is like, congratulations, Cap, you're a criminal. And people get arrested, and everybody's just doing what the plot needs them to do, as opposed to who are they, already established to be. And so
I'm so glad that we brought, that we got to the writers, though, because a lot of times we harp on bad writing, and it deserves to be harped on, but it's nice. Isn't it nice to be able to be like, hey, here's 2 writers doing a good job. So
Absolutely.
So now let me ask you this. This is going to get kind of experience based, but I don't know who else to ask it of except military people. If you've ever seen a commanding officer order someone to their death, or order someone to a situation where they are most likely to die, as a soldier, what do you do with that? How do you process that?
Well, I will say that, knock on wood, I've never been in a combat situation like that, so I've never seen that firsthand. However, believe it or not, we do practice this stuff as officers. I don't know if the NCOs go through the same thing, but we practice it all the time. And it's the same thing as a soldier. It's kind of one of the reasons why you get drummed into your head so often to obey orders, because chances are you may end up being one of those people that is put out there in a situation where you're going to take heavy losses or die yourself. And but it's for something greater than yourself. So you have to have faith in that. And that's a big part of what's called leadership.
Military.
No, it's the leadership climate, the climate of the leadership in a unit is that the leader has to have the trust and respect of his soldiers, so that they will obey those orders, thinking that they're being given for the betterment of the unit and the mission. Because once you lose that, it's almost impossible to get it back. So that's why people get relieved all the time. So
once you lose what? The trust?
Once you lose that trust and respect of your soldiers, then you never have the ability to order soldiers into something that is very, very dangerous anymore, because they'll always be second guessing the commander. So
this is why there were instances of fragging in Vietnam. Soldiers did not like being put through a meat grinder with no apparent benefit out of it, and so they just started refusing to follow orders, to the point where, like, you might send us out there, but we might be coming back a CO short.
Yeah, that's how they turned on Gorman in Aliens, because they saw he didn't know what he was doing at all.
Yeah.
So Vasquez and Drake just did what they wanted to do.
And it's one of those things. I was going to say, it's one of those things. Like I said, though, it's like you can have it and lose it in an instant, And the minute it's gone, your ability to command that unit is pretty much gone, which is why, you you saw it in World War II. Generals would get relieved because they would make a mistake or do something where they lost, the environment for their leadership in that unit was gone. And so they could not effectively command it anymore. They had to go. So
now from a lower tier perspective, because I never had that sort of command position, Nem has been in charge of way more people than I've ever been. But from like the grunt level to just below NCO, there's a couple things I had to consider before I even signed up for the Army. And I think everybody should really think about this before you sign away your life, because you are signing away your life. You're giving it over to the country, to Uncle Sam and all that. I had to determine whether or not I was willing to potentially be killed. I had to determine whether or not I could actually kill somebody, not just in self-defense, but if I was ordered to. And I had to question whether or not I could die if I was ordered to. And I decided I could do all of those things. Then I signed, because that's what was going to be expected of me. Could I risk myself? Could I kill other people? And could I just, give my life to a situation? On top of that, I was in a medical unit. And part of the cold, hard, real-world calculus we had to do with was triage. And I remember the roughest day, one of the roughest classes we took was when we're determining, okay, who's going to live and who's going to die. Now, it's not the same as sending off people to their deaths, but the power was going to be in my hands to decide, like, this guy might be able to be saved. This guy definitely can be saved. Because people can live with their guts out for a number of hours. And other people, you don't tell them they're going to die, but you just make them comfortable as you can. And I don't know, hope they don't figure it out. Maybe they'll just pass away quietly. But that was some real stuff right there. And that was the reality of, if I ever went off to combat and we're getting casualties coming in, deciding who's going to make it and who's not.
Yeah. See, that's a very real dynamic when we're talking about resources. Mm-hmm. So if we only have so much medicine, if we only have so many bandages, if we only have so many beds, we kind of went through that in the pandemic, but the military goes through it all the time. Or like, even if you're an EMT and you're on a scene, you got to assess very, very quickly who's got the best chance of surviving.
Because it's like, in order to save the guy who's really critically injured, is going to take so much manpower and so much time. But I could spend that time actually saving 5 other people, or this guy's a maybe. And that's how you had to look at it. It was numbers.
See, and that's the kind of stuff I'm thinking about as I watch this, because they have clearly all made up their minds. Mm-hmm. Everybody involved in the mix of those 3 things you mentioned, Jeff, and how basically whatever it takes. And so, like, I think Miracle said it tonight, that if you show your true heart, you're at greater risk, or you're going to die sooner, or something like that. So they kind of all get it, mm-hmm. that this is life and death. But they've already resolved themselves to what that means, and that type of thing. That's why I love this culture, and that's why I love these ideas, because it's not you don't see hesitation mm-hmm. on anybody's part. You might see hesitation if they're trying to figure out what's going to be what, but if they know that this is it, then they're like, okay, well, this is the way it ends for them, and that kind of intensity and commitment. I really like it. I really like watching it.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I do have to say as well is that you were talking about, if you get ambushed in their upper position. I mean, there is a way to get out of it, but the thing is, it's always bloody. And you saw that in this episode where, if you get ambushed like that, where, your standard procedure you're taught to do is you begin laying down fire and you pin down your ambusher. And then basically those guys who are staying and go to ground, they're dead, and they know they're dead. You write them off, and then you try and flank. around, and that's exactly what happened in this episode. And it's.
I mean, the other way, like the Israeli Defense Force, they developed a policy of just taking it head on, doing the least expected thing is running straight at your enemy and giving them that like, oh shit, now we're hand to hand.
Yeah. So, but no matter what you do, it's one of those things where he said it's like where you get it. It's like no matter what happens here, a lot of us are going to die.
There's casualties, right. Acceptable casualty rate loss or whatever, which, I'm just imagining, talking to the surviving family members when you have to tell them your loved one is gone. Steve, what did you think when Miracle said we have to help them and she started fighting? Because she was like, she didn't hesitate either. She was like, okay, we have to help them.
She's a samurai just as much as any of them. I mean, samurai women were expected to do these kinds of things. The only difference is that, her role in the household is a little different. But I mean, what is the first thing she does? She grabs the naginata and starts killing people. This is her samurai training. She is trained to do this. So yeah, she's part of that. It's just that, she's not a frontline soldier. She is a household noble. So, but when they're, in the thick of it, it doesn't matter who you are. It's either kill or be killed at that point. So I think that's very much part of that. And it is interesting, though, that it's Blackthorn constantly coming to her rescue. I mean, even though she does get a few really good kills early on with the naginata, which they were trained in. That was the woman's weapon.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, though. The thing that got me was the way that they presented it. Nobody is OP. The closest person to OP here is Buntaro. Buntaro is friggin' just a killing machine. But in the book, he's also like that. He's just a scary effort, So,
yeah, they talk about what a skilled warrior both he and the leper who's on one of the regions, that these guys are like legendary tier.
Well, and his father, Buntaro's father, is the one that delivered the message saying that Toranaga had resigned from the council, so Totomatsu.
And you can tell his dad's a badass too.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if Mariko had picked up a few things from Buntaro being married for him for however long it was.
Well, as you rightly noted, Steve, this is the domain of the samurai wife. She's expected not just to run the household, but to be a part of the defense of it. And also that the naginata was the woman's weapon. Why? Because she can't compete with the man in terms of like strength and speed. So she has a reach tool that gives her a significant advantage in combat with men with swords.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
she's also very fast.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting that her training and her weapons play to her strength instead of trying to pretend she could go toe to toe.
Exactly.
She has the same amount of upper body strength, so all these things are very not Western. And so it's very interesting to see. Now, when Blackthorn's there with the doctor and the doctor is doing, and he's like, he's going to leash me. What is he going to do? And the doctor's like, would you hold still, blah, blah, blah. And she starts flirting. I'm like, maybe you need a woman. Maybe they said instead of, all this medical stuff, maybe you just need the pillow snuggling. You just need some cuddles.
This was from Clavell, and in fact, it was worse in the original version because instead of "it's a male companion," do you prefer a male companion? The line literally was, "Do you prefer boys?" And it's the one line I remember because it made me laugh. Like, what the?
Right, and then she's like, "Would you prefer a male or whatever?" And he's like, I understand what you're driving at, but I got some other things on my mind.
That's not like this. This isn't an instance of being woke. The Japanese are just very uncomplicated when it comes to sex. As she says, in the show there, she says, like, we think it's healthy. And for them, they didn't care whether it was male or female any more than the Romans or the Greek did. Like, if that's what you prefer, that's just what you preferred. But I find it hysterical that the doctor was telling us, like, look, this whiny dude just needs to get laid.
Right.
Meanwhile, she's running up against his he's Protestant, very Protestant, just like, I don't know. I'd be curious to see what would happen and what the Catholics' response would be, So, but
in our heavily Puritan influenced culture, still to this day,
and he's having impure thoughts about another man's wife. Just saying.
We hold one ideal, but we do different stuff.
Well, it's so funny because one of the great things about the show is you do see the hypocrisy in each society. They're like, oh, we've always got to have this face and all this politeness and all this etiquette. And meanwhile, they're all backstabbing each other like crazy. And then when Mariko asks Blackthorn's like, oh, do you really treat your women as like, you put them on the pedestal and treat them super pro? Like, oh no, London's full of whores and sluts.
What's funny is in the book, they make even big. I mean, sex is all over the place all the time. And when he first passes out and he's bathed and everything the first time, like the town is having a great time talking about the size of his junk and how it's different for Japanese men. And, I mean, it's all over the place. Every time he goes everywhere, people are like holding up their hands and stuff.
About that.
And she's like, well, it's like when the clouds meet the rain.
Yeah.
I said that means, and he's like, I get it. I know what it means. And I'm saying to myself, why don't you just give him your cell phone number right in front of your husband? But anyway, I'm like, I knew it. I knew where this was going. Okay, so let's talk about the chase scene, the ship chase kind of stuff that's going on, and then the teach me how to swim scene at the end. Let's start with that one, actually, because I got more out of that in terms of Toranaga is kind of showing that he likes this guy, or he thinks he has something to learn from this guy, or you might be a jerk, but I find you useful on some level. And so, and I'm like, well, I'm glad you do. I'm glad I'm not in Toranaga's position, because you would have been dead, or at least had your hand, because I would have won Darth Vader on you. We would have Jedi'd you. I bet you don't run your mouth with missing hands now, do you? But so they did the kind of thing, but it was very much almost like a you're my bro kind of thing, like what you would do with your friends if you're somewhere. Because when you're a kid or something, I might still do this now, but when you do the tire swing over the pond thing, that is too much fun. And whether you're trying to come back or dive in the lake, whatever, you're hanging out with your bros, you're doing that kind of stuff. And it felt like that kind of moment to me. Like, we got the tire swing and the tires tied up to the tree, and we're going to swing out to the lake together. But I've never done that before. So why don't you show me what that looks like? And the looks he kept giving him. And I'm like, so it felt very much like I'm kind of receiving you into my heart as more of a brother kind of thing.
Right before that, though, and I'm curious if you picked up on it, Toranaga told him he declared him Hatamoto.
Yeah.
And I was curious, do you know what Hatamoto is?
That's a high status kind of kind of position, yeah.
Yeah, high vassal, like a trust retainer.
Really surprising for him to like lay that on him. Like, and I love the reaction. You can see everybody go like, "Whoa, Hakamoto, really?"
Yeah. We talked right before you came in, DT. Before we went live, we were kind of talking about that scene, and it's different in the book. Same essence, but Toranaga, instead of watching, keeps trying until he gets it right. And the first 10 times he tries, he does huge belly flops, and he's got welts on his front of his body. But he just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it, because this is the one thing he's going to do today. He's going to learn to dive. And so he just keeps getting it wrong until he finally gets it right. So it is different, same purpose in the scene, I think, but I think they took a little different approach. It was interesting that they changed that.
Now, consider this. Here's the thought I had while watching this, because he demands a race out of Blackthorn to the shore. And I was thinking, he's making this guy dive and dive and dive, and then he's got to pull his body up out of the water, which is always tough because the water grabs onto you. He's like, is he wearing him out just so he can win the race?
I had thought that.
It sort of fits because he's the chess master.
Yep. I was thinking that.
How you gonna swim with your robes on, because that's gonna weigh you down. You ain't got no speed if you got.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you wear this guy out first.
I mean, he knows he's up against a vastly more experienced diver, and it would totally make sense for him to do that.
Okay, that's starting to make more sense, Jeff. Now that you said it, okay, I'm rolling it around in my revelation machine.
I didn't pick up on that, but yeah, that's pretty crazy, and that puts another layer to Toranaga's thinking. So it's a little to the book, but it's a good one.
It just makes you think there's nothing he does without purpose.
Yeah.
Okay,
And,
now
and the other thing I thought was interesting was like I believe it was one of the people that had known him since he was a child, and she was basically saying, yeah, you know, he was a trickster when he was a kid. And I'm like, you know what? That makes total sense. This is a guy who has been playing tricks his entire life, and he's gotten better at it, and he's been able to use it to be a better leader,
Which again,
in a manipulator.
Goes to the point. That's why, like, Loki should have been written like this.
But Mariko told Blackthorn not to let him win. Yeah. But I would think if I'm putting myself in Toranaga's mind, he's like, yeah, he doesn't want to let anybody let him win. But if he wins by tiring you out first, to him, that's a success.
That's fair.
Yeah, but now what you guys have made me think is that Toranaga is just buttering him up and appealing to his ego to make him sing like the canary and spill his secrets.
It is
but
possible.
You know, the camaraderie is just another part of the game, just to be sure that Blackthorn will do what Toranaga needs him to do as the situation unfolds, that is not genuine. Now,
well, it's like the priest in the prison told him, like, you can't play their games. It's too opaque for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think about the ship chase thing? Because that is definitely another male bonding experience.
I personally, I like the ship chase a lot. I thought I like how Blackthorn at first is like looking like hopeless and resigned, and I loved how he goes back to like it's almost an Eastern approach to start with. Then he goes like, fuck that, I'm from the West. He's like, you know, he starts telling everybody, roll for your lives, you know, I'm gonna do it my way. I'm not going down without a fight. And I really appreciated his strategy of keeping pace with the larger ship and using them as a bulwark against the people who are arrayed against them. And again, there's that like Steve mentioned before. There's that rivalry between him and the Portuguese navigator on the black ship, and the guy. You know, he of course they hate each other. They're enemies, but at the same time, he knows he owes him because he did pull him out of the drink. He pulled him to safety. Right. And I like that there was that little respect at the end. Is like, debt's paid. God be with you. Next time, we'll see. But for now, payback is done. And that is a very honorable thing. That plays into the culture of Japan as well. You know, you have they have an idea called giri, which means a debt or an obligation that must be paid before you're free to kind of do your own thing. And I like seeing that reflected here between these two Western men as well.
I will say that this is a one scene. Now it's in the book and the other miniseries, but it was a little unbelievable to me, and here's why. In the book, and it had to be unbelievable, I'll say that too. In the book, the only reason the galley could keep up and then reach that line at the same time as the black ship is because the ship has to tack several times because of the way the wind is blowing. But in this context, if we have to watch the ship tacking back and forth across the bay, we're going to be bored out of our minds.
Yeah, you know? It's definitely not as exciting as watching these two ships visually pace each other.
Right. Yeah. So in the book, they're rowing like mad to get to a point in the distance, knowing that that's where the black ship wants to get to. But the ship is having to tack several times. It's like, if you do that on TV, we're going to be like, what the hell is going on? And it's boring. And once again, I think it proves good writing because they're like, all right, we're just going to cut all this out. We'll take the flack from people who know about sailing or read the book. We'll deal with it, you know, and give good viewing for everybody. So
and how much of it was that the Portuguese navigator was, you know, throwing it in his favor?
Yeah,
definitely at the end, we see that he, you know, the captain orders him another 5 points, and he's like, nah. And I love how he's like, he already had the advantage, Captain, knowing that he threw the race at the end.
Well, I will tell you, there is a scene on the ship that was cut out. It's in the first miniseries. They cut it in the book. They cut it out of here, and it would have made DT hate Blackthorn even more. and that is a scene where, thank you, Mama. Blackthorn is offered Western food for the first time in weeks, you know, because he's only had Japanese food to eat. and he gorges himself to the point where he throws up all over himself. So he's drunk. And Toranaga agrees to leave him on the boat so that the Spanish can have him. And the way Rodriguez saves his life is by throwing him overboard, by saying he's disgusted with him when really he's saving his life. So, but I was like, if DT had seen that, he'd been like, I'm really through with this too. So.
Well, now y'all have convinced me that Toranaga understands the Portuguese and the Christians and the feuding Japanese houses better than they think he does.
Yeah.
So even when
I think Toranaga knew the black ship was going to run. I think he had them figured.
But even when he befriends you, it's just a ruse. It's all a part of his end game.
Oh, yeah.
And so that makes me have even more respect for Toranaga, in that you know exactly what kind of man this man is, and you're playing him, but he doesn't think you're playing him.
Well, this all it all reflects back on episode 2 when the Taiko is telling him, teach my son that the man who stands on the highest hill is the loneliest of all, and Toranaga has taken that lesson to heart.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting because you're saying, like, how is this guy alive? Well, in the book, in the first miniseries, Toranaga signed him over to the Spanish who were going to execute him. And it's just by pure happenstance that Blackthorn ends up living through that. So Toranaga's like, oh, you've lived your usefulness. Good luck, son. So
the whole idea of Hapkido and Aikido is to take your opponent's force and weight and attack and everything they're doing. Use that momentum against them, not about you spending energy, but you taking the energy that they have poured into their attack and you flowing with it to the point where you turn it into a defense, or you turn it into where you flip what they're doing. And so that's what Toranaga is making me feel like he's been doing from the jump. Like there's nobody in this mix who he doesn't get who they are. He doesn't get their culture. He doesn't get their cultural motivation, but he also gets their personal motivation. And he's like, I know just how to manipulate you because I know what you're going to do in any kind of given situation, is what it's starting to feel like to me now. I'm like, man, it's even deeper what we're seeing.
It's like how Thrawn figures out a culture's tactics by their art. It's very similar to that. And then he's like 10 steps ahead of them when the fight actually happens.
I think the most impressive thing for me with Toranaga, from what we've seen so far, and then what I know of the character in other reading, is that, yeah, he's a schemer. He comes up with the plans. He's playing 5D chess, but he's also tactical. He's flexible. So when the situation changes, he's not locked into a plan. He can adjust what he's doing.
Yeah.
Right.
And, I think that's really what sets him apart.
Okay, so that thing you just said is the difference between him and the Joker in The Dark Knight. And I've tried to explain this to people several times. The way the Joker is written, not that Heath Ledger's performance wasn't off the chain great, because it was great, but I'm like, the way that character is written, everything has to happen exactly the way he planned it, or else none of it can happen. It's all going to fall apart. In this situation, if Toranaga has some stuff built into where if this goes wrong, we got contingency A, and if this goes wrong, we got contingency B, and we already understand people are going to have to sacrifice themselves. So it's like, it feels more real to me. It feels more organic. It feels like the stakes are real, as opposed to you stuck a cell phone in somebody's belly and they didn't die from that. And then you're able to send a signal that lights up the bomb that's with the cell phone. And then when the bomb goes off and will literally blow them into kibbles and bits, all you do is just kind of lean over and like, oh, well, missed that explosion. Yeah, no, see, that kind of stuff takes me out the movie.
Yeah, that's the difference between a true magnificent bastard and somebody who's just a chess master, is the ability to improvise plans on the fly, put yourself at risk. And then when the plan starts to blow up, you come up with something really brilliant at that moment to take advantage of the situation and come out ahead. That's what Toranaga can do.
Yeah. Well, it's like, and it's also like, the writing is like the difference between writing a video game that's on rails, where you only have one plot line that you can follow, which is the Joker thing, versus one that seems like it's fluid and can go in a lot of different directions, which is difficult to do, because then you got to consider, like if I'm sitting down and writing this book, then I've got to be able to at least think a little bit like that to be able to anticipate what I want the things to do. So,
well
as Sheeta says later on, or he says when like, oh man, he's using our own rules against us.
Yeah.
Because he knows how to do that. And even at the end, we see him throw down yet another ace that's up his sleeve when he resigns from the regency because he knows it takes a vote of 5 to do anything. And there's only 4 regents now. Like, he's so far ahead of everybody else, even though he's in constant threat of losing his life. He's just those few inches ahead that you need to avoid the blow that's going to knock you out.
And I love my favorite is watching him play cat and mouse with Yabushiki. So
yes.
See, that's what I mean. Whenever I see Batman beat Joker, even when I saw it in The Dark Knight, Joker just laughs. Doesn't matter how hard Batman punches him. It doesn't matter how many times Batman punches him. He just doesn't feel pain, which takes me out of the scene every time. So it's like, if you're telling me that either the chemicals that changed you gave you some kind of healing factor, I need to know that. If you're telling me that when you're crazy, you don't feel pain, okay, because I know that's true when you're high on, something intense. But I'm like, you need to communicate to me, why is this man getting beaten within an inch of his life and losing teeth and bleeding out? And he's just laughing, okay? And so when I see Batman just beat him and beat him and beat him and nothing happens, that takes me out of it every time. But in this situation, nobody's laughing. Everybody knows any blow could be the last blow, and they all have to be fast enough. The other thing is when I don't know if you could call it full melee fighting, but when they were fighting in the forest, you've got to turn, spin, and move, not just to block and not just to parry, but to take your opponent out. And I like the way they do the slice across the neck, or what they do is with a very efficient blow, put you down and take you out. So even if that blow doesn't kill you, if you get a belly wound, you're going to bleed out.
Yeah, and it has to be because the people who are leading the caravan, they're all armored, and so you got to go for the weak spot. You don't have time to screw around.
That's what I'm saying. And so it just feels more real to me. It's not just visceral. It's like, at any moment you can either get mortally wounded or you can get wounded so bad you start bleeding, and that So that the stakes feel much more organic to me than when I see Batman and all that armor and he's just punching, and Joker's just laughing. I'm like, really? How much does Joker weigh? Like $1.05, really? But anyway, okay. So in terms of closing thoughts, what I want to say is I'm definitely intrigued by things that have happened so far, and I haven't read the book, so honestly don't know what's coming, but I'm excited to see it. And I agree with everybody when they say it's happy to be reviewing. It's good for us to be reviewing something that has good writing that keeps us engaged and surprised. And it's good that we're getting invested in the characters, even though as always we have different opinions about them. We care about their fate. And that's the thing. That's another mark of really good writing is I want to see how this plays out. I want to see who's the last person standing. I want to see the price they paid to get there. And I want to see if they think it's worth it. We have, as the audience, have to think it's worth it. And the characters have to think it's worth it. And so I'm excited about seeing how all that plays out.
Cool.
Steve, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums everything up. The only thing that I would say is this is the kind of story that should be the rule instead of the exception. Too many times we have seen that this kind of writing is not that common right now. There are too many people that are dropping the ball, but this show I'm hoping will prove an example of how to do it right, how to do it well, and that this is the example to strive for. And we continue to see it week after week, and I hope that it maintains that quality because we need more shows like this.
Amen. Bracy, final thoughts?
I don't think I can add much more to it because so far so good. This show is doing everything right. Again, it's beautifully filmed, which I do appreciate even for the shows that we don't enjoy. I do appreciate the level of production value that is going into things. But if it's not supported by a good story and good characters with arcs, then it's just pretty wrapping paper around an empty box. But here, this box is full of goodies, and I can't wait to get the next installment.
This is what Michael Jordan understood. He understood that you can't have any weaknesses in your game. So he practiced everything until his free throws, his fadeaway jumpers, his 3-point shots, his, alley-oops, his dunks, everything he did was strong. And that's what the show is making me feel like. It's being written by people that get that idea, that even if you have authenticity in your culture and authenticity in your language and your actors, if ain't no story there, it don't matter.
This is from top to bottom. This is clearly a production being put together by people who care about what they're doing.
Who care? That's right. Nim's final thoughts.
Well, first, look at me shocked that DT from Chicago is a Bulls fan. So,
what a shot!
Yeah, I'll echo what everybody else said and add to what Steve said that a lot of us out there, we get some flack and we get a lot of people agreeing with us that we want things to be true to the source material. Well, that doesn't mean that you don't have to change stuff or adapt stuff to bring it to the screen, because you do, and they're doing it here. But man, this show is faithful to the source material and faithful to the characters and respectful. And they've done some stuff on costume design, which is different, but it's all faithful to the source material. And if I had to pick a show to say, look, this is the way you do it, this is the way you bring something from another medium onto the screen, so far through 3 episodes, it's almost perfect. So
yeah, there's nothing more disappointing than a show that claims, okay, we all understand that transferring a story from one medium to another is always going to have change. We all get that. But when you tell me we're doing this in the spirit of the source material and then it's 180 degrees, then why would I ever believe anything you say ever again?
Right.
No, yes. And that's what we're holding our breath on for Superman Legacy, isn't it? Or just Superman now. That what Jeff just said encapsulate exactly what fandom is doing, because it's a make or break film. But we'll talk about that on another episode. I want to thank my co-host. Thank you, Nims.
Awesome. Thank you. And as always, great being on the show with you guys. So thank you,
Steve.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into the next episode. Hopefully it'll continue to build on what it's done here.
Thank you, Jeff.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Thanks to everybody that watched us live. Don't forget to check out our other shows on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out other podcasts, because we literally have something for everybody, from Comic Crusaders and United Capes Podcast Network. We have retro shows. We have horror movies. We have up-and-coming artists. We have up-and-coming writers. We have new comic books. I just did an interview with a friend of mine about a Slacker comic book from '93. So we literally have something for everyone.
You don't mind me plugging something real quick? I just did an interview today with Al Mega talking to Nina Bergman with her new film Cold Meat, which I can say she's excellent in it, and the film itself is excellent.
Sweet.
Awesome. So me and this crew, thank you for your support, and we will all see you next time on the next episode of Sloppy Spoilers.